Tell me a little bit about yourself.
Okay. My name is Molly, and I was born and raised in Nashville, Tennessee. I came from an affluent family, and within that, there was also a lot of chaos and trauma in our household. I want to make sure that I honor my mother and my father by saying they did do the best they could with what they had. But along the way, there were things that had penetrated this illusion of a bubble that we had. And in that would be like the enemy and its tactics to kill, steal, and destroy. And that's ultimately what happened in my childhood. I think that as a child, I struggled with fitting in with other kids my own age. I feel like because of the way that I grew up in my childhood, there was a need to grow up a lot quicker than I had to. And ultimately, it kind of felt like I didn't really have a childhood. My family really felt like it was important to get me fixed, quote unquote. And they did take us to church, but it was more of no one really had a Bible at their house. We just went to church because that's what we were told to do. So it was checking off the boxes and really more about faith, like performance trap type stuff that was already beginning to be instilled in me, even as a child, which was also part of the reason why the trauma just continued to grow, even though they sent me to the best of doctors. Because ultimately what happened was there was a prescription pad taken out. So from a very young age, I thought I was broken and that I needed medication to be normal, per se, was what it chalked up to, which really led to a belief in myself that I needed medication to be what God created me to be. And I think that as the years went on, I'd still thought that because my parents had sent me away by the time I was 16. So by the time I got into high school, I was already dabbling with drugs and alcohol. Both of my parents had a background of addiction and alcoholism. And so I was exposed to those kind of things early on. And I guess I had really felt like that there was a void, there was something missing, and there was a hole, deep hole within me. And the medications they had prescribed me weren't working, so I sought out, I started smoking marijuana and drinking with the kids in high school, thinking that's just what everybody did, but it was much more for me because it became a daily habit. I soon got into an abusive relationship with a drug dealer, and this was just my freshman year of high school. And so the consequences just started to pile up even at an early age. I totaled my first car. I was just drinking till I blacked out, and my parents intervened and they sent me away to a long-term treatment center when I was 16. Really, that program was for young girls who had suffered any kind of sexual brokenness too. So they did touch on that. It was a year of my life where I had first experienced what it was like to really be off medications. And so I believe that time I really did recognize that there was a power. I didn't have a connection with God yet, but I knew that there was something greater than me that was making that possible, where I could be in that place for a year and not be on medication and really do these treatment assignments. And ultimately, I actually believe that I was in a place where I was starting to thrive. So I got out of treatment and I started to work at a treatment center, and I managed to stay sober for about 6 years, but ultimately I had never met Jesus. I thought that I had a relationship with God, but had never been introduced to Jesus. Just thought that I didn't understand really what that really looked like. I've heard it said before, like you can be a fan of God or you can have a relationship with God. And I think that I just did what I was told to do because I thought that that's what I should be doing. So I was checking off all these boxes, but I really didn't really know what it felt like to be loved by Jesus, to be called by Jesus, to be known by him, and, be worthy and all the things. So I had about 5 or 6 years sober, and I had a back surgery and was prescribed opiates. And, I truly believe the relapse happened long before I drank or did any drugs. But once I was given a prescription for a narcotic, it was one of those things where it was like I picked up right where I left off. And I started drinking and doing drugs again. And so that at that time too, I had my children. So I thought that I could manage this. Like I could take the prescriptions as prescribed. I could just because I felt like I had never even had a legal drink. So I could just drink a glass of wine, at night. So at first it was like I was trying to control the situation, like making myself believe that, I didn't have this addiction or alcoholism, that I could do those things. And then I continued to get deeper and deeper into it. It was only a matter of time. I can't even really tell you what year it was, but this continued. And before long, I started doing heavier drugs. And as a result of that, it led me to places where human trafficking was happening. And so my piece of the story of human trafficking is that I really had this illusion that it wasn't human trafficking. So like during the time that I was going to these trap houses to cop drugs and stuff like that, like I was exposed to this, but like I didn't really understand what it was. I even remember paying a girl one time to not take a date because I felt so bad for her. And at this time, I don't know if I mentioned before, but I did come from a family that was affluent. So I had means, like my family was still sending me money. I had the means to be able to do the things I was doing and keep up with that lifestyle. But there came a day when they cut me off because they felt like, they were being told to do that. They didn't want to enable me. I had them once tell me that, I'd rather step on your toes than your grave, as I was just completely just torn to pieces about the fact that they had cut me off. I didn't understand. And so it got to a place where I was going to these places to cop drugs and alcohol, and they were grooming me. They had taken my driver's license, my phone, and I had been beat quite a few times for not going when I was told to go. At one time it got so bad that they had drugged me when I was drinking, and 3 men had assaulted me and filmed the assault, and then it was getting sold over and over again. So that's a form of exploitation that was taking place that I had no clue was going on. And so I was just getting in all kinds of situations, and then, I would overdose. And this, I can't even tell you how many times specifically I overdosed, but I know that I was Narcaned at least 5 different times. And just knowing that, even in the depths of all that, like knowing that I was going to die, like if I didn't get out, and that knowing that the Lord had his hand on me at that moment, because there's no reason that I really should have been alive. I even went through a process of where I was in a sober living facility, and they found a blood clot and aneurysm on my aortic valve. So I had open heart surgery. And at that time, I still didn't have a relationship with the Lord, but I knew that, again, like that he had his hands on me and that I was being protected, because it was a miracle that they even found that while I was in the hospital. But it wasn't long thereafter that my mind was still not transformed, and I went right back to what I knew best. And I was trying to manipulate that, and that I would only use certain chemicals because I knew that I couldn't use that chemical for heart purposes, and, just doing anything and everything I could to try to get that fix again, because I still had that. It was a God-sized hole that I was trying to fill with man-made things. And so that happened. And, so my trafficking experience looked, like I said, a little bit different than what the typical trafficking experience, like for some, looks like. And I say typical, I don't even know if there is a typical. I'm one of those people that never even recognized myself as being a victim of human trafficking. Like I charged it to the game. I just felt like it just came with the territory. I was living the life I was living, and that's just what happened when you're living like that. And I know now that's of course not true at all, but I took a lot of ownership for what went on. And so I had met this guy on Facebook, and I thought that he was a good guy. Like he offered me a room to stay in because, again, my family had cut me off. I didn't really have anywhere to go. And so I started staying in his room, and that led to kind of like what I thought was like a relationship type thing. And then he was a guy who worked at a regular job. He went to church. Like he presented himself as, a Christian man that was respectful and kind and loving. And then when he found out I was getting sober, because I believe he knew he had me under his thumb, like when I was using, he had also taken my phone, and he had kept me in his home for about 3 days. And then he had been giving me drugs, and I had blacked out. And then he left the home, and I was able to get across the street to a neighbor to get free. And then I had reached out to Christina. I had met Christina like at another sober living house. She's the operations director of the National Anti-Human Trafficking Coalition. And I knew that like she had something in her, which I know now to be Jesus, that I knew I was going to see her again one day. And I knew that she had solutions to offer me. And so when I got to the end of myself, I reached out to her, and I knew that if I continued down this life, I was going to die. There was no question about it. And I needed help, like bad. And I was ready to get the help. And so she led me to a trauma care facility in Mississippi. So I went out there for a year, and it was called Transformation Garden. And really they laid me at the feet of Jesus and waited for me to accept him. And they talk about, times, tears, and talk. And that's really what they emphasize. And once again, here's another facility that I go to where they don't allow medications there, like any type of medications. So I came off about 6 medications at the time. And I remembered walking into the lady's office and being like, I'm more worried about y'all than I am me. Like, I really did not believe that I could be complete without some kind of medication or something that was going to help me, because I believed that trauma was so deep that, I was in fear of everything. I was scared to go to the store. I was scared to be in public. I was scared to do everything, it felt like. So I got to this place, and I can't say enough about it. There was scripture written all over the wall before they even built the facility. It was really God's home. I walked in, and I instantly felt the love of Jesus. I remember telling them, I'm going to get emotional one at a time, I'm sorry. Gosh. Wow. It's hard for me to even articulate like how powerful this experience was for me. I just remember walking in and looking around and being like, I don't deserve this, And the lady that was doing my intake looked at me and she said, none of us deserve this, because I was just beaten down. Like at that point, I was broken. I was just and really I look back on that now and see the beauty of that. Like I was literally at the end of myself, ready to fully surrender to something. And that something and that somebody is Jesus. And, I spent a year there of just like really like getting down and I remember thinking to myself, like, are you sure that I meet the criteria to be here? Like even at that point, I didn't understand that I was a victim of anything. Like I really felt like, again, I chalked this up to being like, I was naive, like I made some poor decisions, which led me into these situations with people who ultimately were trafficking women. And again, it was only by the grace of God and his hands being all over me that I wasn't actually like in the act of trafficking before I got there. I was held against my will and I was, abused by men. And I needed some healing from that. And it wasn't going to be from a prescription bottle, it was going to be from a man named Jesus. And they literally just walked me through that process. It is a beautiful, beautiful place, and I was so grateful to have been able to go there. And really, they got to the bottom of also like just early childhood stuff that I had not had taken. Really, no one had really taken the time to sit down and unpack a lot of that stuff with me in a safe place. And so I built trust with them, and that's the initial part of like being there, is building that trust with them so that I'm able to sit down and really share openly about some of that stuff. I think that, the identity that I had was not the identity the Lord had given me. The one that I was walking in when I walked into that place is a whole different one when I walked out. And it was the one that he had given me from birth, that before the foundations of the world, like he knew ultimately I was going to find him, and he had chosen me to be there. I remember a girl telling me like, you're chosen. And I don't think that ever sunk in until I actually got to that place and recognized like he had literally rescued me out of this place of darkness and placed me into a spot where I could just sit down and just be free and just relax. My kids, I actually had somebody who was definitely the hands and feet of Jesus during that time who took my son in. He was a junior in high school, so he stayed there with her, and I came back to visit, and I can just remember him. He wrote me this card about, I had been to treatment probably 13 times was what I counted up before I went to this long-term facility. And I would go in treatment and it was like putting a Band-Aid over something. I would detox and I would go through a 28-day treatment center, and then I would come out and I would still have all the same things that were going on. And he wrote me this card after I came to visit him. And it was like, I've never seen you with such a free mind and a free spirit. And I mean, it just meant everything, because it wasn't even the words, it's like more is caught than taught. And I believe that, like, even with Jesus, like, that people can see that all over you, like, and just see the freedom, that he offers was more than anything that any facility could have offered me, any money, any drug, of course. And so my son was just elated to see that. So anyway, so I came back home. Well, while I was in Transformation Garden, I started diving into the Word and just growing such a strong just relationship with the Lord. And just I had this eagerness, like, to go back in and to share with other women that if he did it for me, he can do it for you. Like, and here's the testimony, and he's written one for you too, because we would see women come in and they would need people to partner with, like, to go over the Word with them. And so I started being in prayer, like, about what that was going to look like when I got back to Nashville. So I knew I was coming back to Nashville because I have children here. I have an older daughter as well. And so I wanted to get back, and God's in the business of restoration. Yes. And he's definitely done that with my children as well. And so when I got back here, I originally started working for a doctor because I did some different things in my life. I went to radiology school, real estate school. I got my resume. It's just so silly because it has so many different things on it. And I really didn't know what I was going to do, but I knew I needed to get a job when I came back. So started working for a doctor, and I came back to NAHT and was like a member here doing the Restore program. And I could remember when I came to visit one time, Christina was like, you never know, maybe one day you'll work for me. And that just like stuck to my heart. Like, I was like praying that, like, the whole time that I was in the facility, because I really knew that what was happening here was a mission, that really God had put these people on a mission, and I wanted to be a part of that. So I was praying and I was volunteering here on Sundays. And Christina called me one day and was like, and I was like, whatever it is, I'll do it. Yes, yes. And she was like, hold on a minute. She's like, you might want to come sit down and talk to me about this. And so, like, going back to my childhood, because I came from like an affluent background, like there wasn't, and I say it, maybe that's me being like stereotypical to say because of that, but really my mother wasn't really in the kitchen cooking. Like, there was people cooking for us. So like that wasn't fostered in me. Like, being in the kitchen wasn't something I did a lot. And so I remember Christina was like, well, we actually have this idea that you could be in the bakery. And I was like, what? I was like, are you me? Like, but it goes to show too, like, just in like all the things that have happened throughout my life and how different ways that I've been stretched. It's the gifts that he's imparted to me that I have no idea I even have as I become a new creation, as he's transformed me into this new, like, he's renewed my mind, but he's also shown me parts of me that I never even put to practice because I didn't know they existed. So I got in the kitchen and with Katie, and I mean, first of all, like, Katie is amazing. So we had spiritual mentors while we were in Transformation Gardens, and I remember leaving there and being like super sad that I wasn't going to still be like that close to that spiritual mentor. And I just believe God put all the right people in my path at just the right time, because he picked me up out of Mississippi and placed me here in that kitchen with Katie, because I always joke with her. I'm like, I want to be you when I grow up. We're like the same age, but like spiritually, like, she's just like a spiritual mother to me. And I got in that kitchen and really recognized super quick, in short order, it wasn't really about baking. At the end of the day, it was really about fostering that identity that they had already, really poured into me at Transformation Garden, but that was going to be able to be continued here. This process of sanctification that's, someone's guiding me through that and showing me like how this call in my life is that strong, and just shoring me up on a daily basis. It was really beautiful. So I sat with her and I was like, I can do your dishes. And she was like, no, you're going to do more than my dishes. And then it wasn't but a couple of months later that she asked me to be the assistant lead baker in there. And once again, I was like, me? My kids were like, you can't even boil water. I was like, you should see, I can bake a pinafore now. So I learned how to do that. And I also, like I was saying, in that bakery, at the core of it is discipleship. And just really, it's a beautiful, beautiful thing, is because we give hope to like people that come in. It's an awareness piece. Some people don't really know how to help or give back in the human trafficking industry. Like, in that actual like piece of that kind of scares them. Like, how can I help? What can I do? And that's an opportunity to do that. So we get to tell people about what that looks like. And so I got in the kitchen and did that. And then ultimately they had a job come open as a case manager. And so I went from working in the bakery full time to being a case manager, where I work with victims of human trafficking and survivors, and ultimately the goal is for them to become thrivers. And I daily am just blown away by what the Lord does in people's in and through people on a daily basis, and it's just such a beautiful thing. As we talked about it before, I want to be a part of this, and watching the light come on and watching like people just it's so amazing to see and to be able to be a part of. So
how beautiful that you got to see it in your own life, right? Where you came to this realization of who you are and how loved you are by your Heavenly Father. But now you get to take that and share it with other people who are going through the same brokenness you went through. And I just love how God does that.
I know.
Like, it's so cool.
Yeah, it's amazing.
So, and now you're here full time, serving women, helping women who have been through brokenness. And it's incredible. So I'm sure you see a lot here, a lot of brokenness. I think more than your typical person realizes is out there, because it's really easy to ignore all the problems in the world, right? And to just keep your eyes focused on your own life and what you have going on, and not even realize all the trauma and tragedy that happens around you all the time. And so being exposed to that, I'm sure that you have some things that you wish the people could have said to you that maybe you can say to the people who are living in that brokenness that could bring them some hope and encouragement. Like, what do you find yourself telling these women, or just saying to them to show them how loved they are and that there's hope and that they too can overcome like you did?
Well, I just know that there's always hope. And I think that that's a hard question to answer, because I mean, there's so many different ways that I have answered that for people, like when they've come in, depending on their circumstances, but that the Lord provides a way out for everybody and in every circumstance. And if somebody had told me to just look around, like look at your life, and I think that it goes back to it clicking one day that it all had to happen to get me right where I am at this very moment, so that I could be a part of a mission that offers that hope, like that there are resources out there, that there are people who want to help you, that Jesus loves you, but so much more than that, He has a call on your life, and that He covers all of it. Like, there's nothing that you can't be forgiven for. All of it is covered, and that He provides that grace and that mercy for us. I think that setting aside the shame and the guilt is a huge piece of that. Like, for me to have reached out and asked for help, it really took me getting to the end of myself, but more so than that, like just understanding that that I had a purpose, that He wants me to thrive, to live, not just exist, like, and that is not what He wants for us, and that he calls you to be worthy, like you are His child, and that there is definitely hope and that there's a way out. And it may not look like it in the very moment. I know I have told people before, like, that we're either coming out of a trial, in a trial, or going into one. So it's like it's always a changing thing. And when we're in the midst of a trial, sometimes it's really hard for us to look outside of that and see like all the moving parts that are happening. So I believe that even if somebody's watching this, there's a purpose behind that, and that, we can find hope knowing that everybody has a testimony that's written, and that He has a purpose for you, and that a call on your life.
Absolutely. So one question we always ask when we do these interviews is about love. We feel like the Lord called us, like we called it You Are Loved. We want people, our number one mission is to let people know that they're loved.
I love that.
But a lot of times people grew up in brokenness, and love looked very different to them.
Right.
So knowing that they're loved by the world is very different than knowing that you're loved by your Heavenly Father. And I wondered if you could just talk for a minute, or just about what you thought love was compared to now that you've experienced that true love of your Creator, what love looks like today, or how you would describe love today, or what's different today.
Oh, there's so much different in that, and that's such a beautiful question. I think of love, like when you asked me that, actually, the first thing that came to mind is like when I was growing up, it was transactional, you know, like that you loved me if I did a certain thing or if I behaved a certain way, or, you know, there was always like, there's like a scorecard for it, like, you know, and I think of love as like, it was not, it was, so it was conditional in a sense, like, and then now that the love of Jesus has entered into my heart, like, it's so much more. And also I think that the difference too is it's not just an emotion. Like, I think that it's an action. I think that because the love of Jesus has entered into my heart, like, people can feel that from me, but it's not me, it's Jesus. Like, it's so much bigger than me. I have a grandchild that I was just born last month, and I think of that when I think of love. Like, it's almost even hard to like put into words. But it's kind of like the idea of being grateful. Like, I used to talk about being grateful before I knew Jesus, but it was like now, like, my heart is grateful. Like, he's instilled in me something that I'd never known before. I'd never felt that kind of love until I met Jesus. And it's just, it's such a powerful, powerful feeling. And I think that everybody deserves to feel the love of Jesus.
Absolutely.
Like, it's, and it's not transactional, it's unconditional. Like, it goes on. And I wake up every day and I feel that like heavy on me. And I feel so honored and blessed to have that.
Yeah, to know that despite any
Everything.
choices that you made or anything, like, he loves you,
Yes.
and he created you, and he chose you, and he's now using you
Right.
to reach his other children, and that's so beautiful.
Yeah. I mean, he knew what I was going to do before I even did it. And he
Right.
still chose to love me.
Yes.
And I think of the sheep, you know, him leaving the 99 for the one, just running after me. Like, you know, just the amount of love. Like, I think of the reckless love that he has for me is just, it's so beautiful. And he gives me, again, the ability to share that with others now. So that's so beautiful.
Well, Molly, I'm so grateful for you, and number one, for everything that you're doing here, and the way that you're helping women is just so admirable, and it's just amazing. And just for your willingness to be vulnerable. I know it's really hard to share some of the things that we've been through in the past, but I know that this story is going to reach people who are feeling lost and feeling broken and feeling like they have to, you know, they're afraid to ask for help. They're afraid
Right.
to reach out. They have that shame and guilt that you talked about, and they think that this is just their own fault because they put themselves in this situation, so they think there's no way out. And so you just showing that you felt that way, but God provided a way, and that there is hope is really, really special. And so I'm honored to be here with you today, and just so thankful for your heart and
Thank you.
everything that you're doing.
It's an honor. Thank you for having me.
Yeah, I appreciate you very much.